All right, I'm recording this for future purposes. As we go along, this is only the third time we have had this. Let me get my camera a little bit centered there so you can see my bald head better. Um, this is something that I found very important, especially as I, I matured later into life, and the things I've witnessed and dealt with throughout my life as far as death is concerned. The big thing that people have in common is that we will all die. That's it. We're likely will experience the death of someone we love also. And yet, despite this shared future, death can be hard to talk about because it's not an experience that anyone can report back from to say how it went. When you or a loved one starts approaching death, the existential stakes can go from theoretical to personal, sometimes feeling emotionally, physically, and spiritually fraught. That's why it can help to hear the insights of people who see death all the time, because understanding it now can help us better process grief about others and feel more at ease when thinking about our own mortality. I have dealt with a lot of death in my life, most recent years, the death of all my family. I've had conversations with palliative and hospice care physicians, nurses, social workers. They've done their best to comfort me. They surprised me and they've challenged my own assumptions about death. And maybe what we're doing here, this discussion, will help you as well. Some of the biggest misunderstandings that they shared with me about death and what the reality actually is the physical process of dying doesn't look like it does in the movies. This was a repeated theme among the experts I spoke with. Pop culture may have you thinking that death happens quietly and quickly with eyes closing and arms crossed, but dying from natural causes often looks different in real life. Someone's dad said to the nurse, "I'm about ready to hang it up." And then he died minutes later. But that type of death is very uncommon. In her decade-long career, Penny Smith said she's only come across a few instances in which people died quickly. It's usually more of a process where they go into the unresponsive state, and there's all kinds of things going on with the body. Their color's changing, their breathing is changing, and then they'll finally slip away. So she started posting TikTok videos about working in hospice care during the COVID-19 pandemic when 2020 came and everything shut down. And has since amassed 640,000 followers on that platform. She uses skits, she uses sound effects to educate people on what it's like to be in the room with someone who is dying, covering topics like deathbed visions to the sounds that dying people make. Common responses to her TikToks are comments of relief, acceptance, commiseration at seeing someone describe an experience that resembles how their own loved ones died. She said, "I, as a hospice nurse, have been with so many families where they were really disturbed by what they were seeing or scared. And I would tell them that's normal. We see this all the time. The relief is palpable, palpable." In one TikTok, she explains that when a person's body is shutting down, it's normal if they do not want water. A top comment on the video reads, "Thank you for this. My mom stopped drinking when we knew she was going to pass, and I still felt like I should have tried to have her drink water more." Among the physical processes of dying, Smith said the biggest misunderstanding she sees is when family members worry that their loved ones are dying of starvation because they've stopped wanting to eat. These are people who are already dying. They don't need the food. And when the family starts to try to force them or coerce them into eating just by, come on, just have a bite, just to eat something, it just sets up so much more stress between the family and their loved one who is transitioning. Similarly, families often worry that the use of morphine and other opiates will hasten the death of a loved one. According to Frances Heller, a senior social worker for the palliative care consult service in New York Presbyterian Columbia University, Irving Medical Center. Some people will say to me, well, we had an uncle who was in the hospital dying, and then as soon as they put the morphine on, he died really quickly. I have to explain to them, well, he probably died really quickly because he was dying. He wasn't dying because of the morphine, but they put him on the morphine to help. There's lots of misconceptions about death and dying. Families can live with a lot of regret over what they should have done. If you're seeking to support a loved one who is dying, be mindful of how your own fear and discomfort could impact what a dying person shares with you. According to one hospice physician, some dying people try to talk about their experience with loved ones, but the families dismiss it because of their own discomfort, using languages like, you're not dying, don't worry about it. So many times, loved ones have the most regret. They're so terrified of losing their loved one that they can't be fully present to their loved one at the time when they need them the most. Really, to hold their hand, to really honor what they're going through. And have a space to share what they're experiencing in this epic journey they're about to embark on. But if you had a strained relationship with a person before they were dying, don't feel like you have to force a connection that is not authentic either. Your relationship with the dying person is personal. And if you didn't have a good relationship, you were not obligated to go and be with that person. It's also important to provide space for people to be themselves when they are grieving. I really ultimately believe that what happens is what needs to happen. And I see a lot of suffering for families that get left behind when they feel like they should have done something different. You grieve the way you're going to grieve. You let go the way you're going to let go. I tend to want to be careful about saying you should do X, Y, and Z. Not everyone wants silence or a somber mood when they are dying. Healthcare professionals and family members can make assumptions about what a dying person would find comfortable without considering what that person truly enjoys. Some people may desire silence, others may welcome raucous celebrations. Smith recalled worrying about a football game party happening in the room of a dying woman until one of the patient's adult sons reassured Smith that this was her passion. The son said, oh my gosh, she was the queen of football parties every Sunday with everybody in the neighborhood. Yes, she loves this. I was new in my hospice career and making assumptions about what I thought a dying person would want. I thought they would want a quiet, dark room, and that's not necessarily the truth. Not enough people plan or talk about how they want to die. Most Americans say that given the choice, they prefer to die at home. But about 1 in 5 deaths in the U.S. occurs in admission to an intensive care unit. In the book Extreme Measures, Finding a Better Path to the End of Life, Dr. Jessica Zitter details what she calls the end of life conveyor belt, a type of care in which dying ICU patients receive painful treatments to be kept alive at all cost. Unfortunately, by the time someone is on the conveyor belt, it's often too late to talk to them about what they want. And then everybody is trying to play catch up. And it's hard to get it right when the chips are down and there's so much emotion. So my recommendation is to talk about these issues early on in life, maybe starting when you become an adult. Start to think about your mortality and visualize how you would want things to go for you when you get into that stage of life, the end stage. Communicate honestly. The people that I notice that have been the least amount of distress are the ones who have lived really fully and that they can say to themselves, I was here. Filling out forms for so-called advanced care planning goes a long way, but it's important that you, number one, identify a person you trust, or two or three people that can honor your wishes and have the conversation ahead of time before you're in the state where you can't communicate your needs and wishes. Some hospice workers recommend 5 wishes. An advanced care planning program is one way to get clarity on how you want things to go. Morgan recommended playing a card game called Go Wish with a friend, a partner, or someone else you hope will follow your end of life wishes. The cards have different statements on them about possibilities of what you might want or not want, and you make stacks of the ones that you like, the ones you know you don't care about, and the ones that you're not sure about. Someone playing the game may find it difficult to choose which cards represent their values, which is why Morgan suggests having 2 people play together so that it can be a conversation starter. Keep in mind that there is no one right way to die, and preference may differ. There are people who feel that every moment of life is precious and that they value the length of life over the quality of life. So they're willing to endure a certain amount of suffering to be able to be kept alive. Then there are other people who value quality of life over quantity of life. And they would rather focus on comfort, even if it means they won't live as long. There are still a lot of negative associations with hospice care, even though it can be helpful. There's a difference between palliative care and hospice. Palliative care workers help to make a patient comfortable at any stage of their life if they're suffering. Hospice is a medical service specifically for people with a short-term life expectancy. While anyone living with a serious illness can seek palliative care, Medicare will help cover hospice care costs for people in the U.S. if their health care provider certifies that they are terminally ill or have 6 months or less to live. Some people wrongfully assume that going into hospice automatically shortens the life of a patient. Smith said she has been called a murderer for working in hospice care, adding that the worst myth about hospice workers is that they kill their patients. People think that when you go on hospice, it's a death sentence and that death is imminent. In fact, research shows that seeking palliative care at an early point can improve quality of life. Published in 2010, one study on advanced lung cancer patients found that offering early palliative care on an outpatient or ambulatory basis led fewer clinically significant depressive symptoms and a longer median survival. When patients are suffering, they use so much of their energy just to fight the suffering that if we can make them comfortable, they sort of stabilize. And a lot of times it really helps them to live longer. Hospices can differ in their approach to care and the additional services they offer. There are resources that can help you figure out the right questions to ask and select the best hospice for you or loved ones. We cannot control death. There can also be a misunderstanding about the medical community's ability to defeat death, even from healthcare workers themselves. The biggest misunderstanding that I see among patients, families, and even healthcare professionals around the issue of death is that we think we can control it. We believe that with all of our machines, technology, medications, we can determine when and even if that happens, instead of accepting death as a natural end point of this life. We get depressed and even angry when it happens. We avoid planning for it or even talking about death, and then are shocked when it happens. The reality is that we cannot control death, and we'll all experience it at some point. The people that I notice that have the least amount of distress are the ones, not so much that they've controlled every element, but they have lived really fully and that they can say to themselves, I was here. And people around them can honor that and acknowledge that, like, yeah, we saw you, we felt you. And that was so important to them. Allowed a deep relaxing into what was coming next. At the same time, it's okay not to be ready. Morgan said many conversations around death and dying have focused on making sure someone's ready and not as much on cases in which person loves life until the last minute and is not ready to go. It's okay to miss life. In our conversations, hospice and palliative care workers suggested that it's helpful to keep an open mind about death, leaving space for it to be both and. Death can be devastatingly sad, but it don't only have to be a somber occasion. Dying may be painful due to terminal illness, but it's not inherently so. It can be positive and hard. It can be. It was exactly what it needed to happen, and they had a beautiful death. Wow, was that hard to see them go, because I would have loved to have had them around for 10 more years. So there is so much misunderstandings about the process of dying. And that's why we started the Death Cafe. We're trying to do it once a month. The Zoom process that I'm recording this on now has not garnered a lot of attention. So I'm recording this to share it on social media. Also, soon to come, we have been offered 2 opportunities for physical locations. And to those that are willing and open and desirous of having this discussion. One would be the Cracker Barrel in Clara, Alabama, which we have been offered by the manager there. Another one would be at the Senior Center in Sylacauga, and we've been offered the opportunity to present there as well. There's never an agenda. We're not trying to sell anything. We're not promoting any philosophy. We're not discussing religion. We're not discussing afterlife. We are simply discussing the process of dying, the fears, the emotions, and so forth, and a better understanding of, like I discussed here, of what the dying process is about from the individual that's going through that process. So I've recorded this and we're going to put this out there on social media. And whenever you happen to listen to this, please feel free to reach out to us so you can join us in our next Death Cafe. Thank you.